The arena went silent. 15,000 people held their breath. Elvis Presley was walking off the stage. Mid-song. Mid-performance. Nobody knew why. The spotlight followed him as he stepped down from the platform, his white jumpsuit catching the light, his face unreadable. The band stopped playing. The backup singers froze. Security guards looked at each other, confused. Something was happening. Something nobody had planned. And then everyone saw it. On the side of the stage, partially hidden in shadow, sat a man. A homeless man. Clutching a battered guitar. Tears streaming down his weathered face. But how did we get here? How did one of the biggest concerts of 1974 turn into something nobody would ever forget? Let me take you back. 6 hours earlier. Memphis, Tennessee. The afternoon sun beating down on Beale Street. His name was Robert Hayes. 53 years old. Hadn't had a home in 7 years. Hadn't seen his daughter in 12. The guitar in his hands was the only thing left from his old life, back when he played in small clubs, back when he had dreams that felt within reach. Every day, Robert sat on the same corner, playing songs for spare change. Most people walked past without looking. Some dropped coins without breaking stride. A few stopped to listen, but never for long. But Robert kept playing. Because music was the only language he remembered. The only thing that still made him feel human. That afternoon, he was singing, "Love Me Tender." His voice cracked on the high notes. His fingers stumbled on the chords. But there was something raw in the way he sang. Something honest. Something that came from a place deeper than technique. A woman stopped. She was crying. She didn't say why. She just stood there, listening, tears running down her cheeks. When the song ended, she placed a $20 bill in his guitar case and whispered, "Thank you." Robert didn't know that the woman worked for the Memphis Coliseum. Didn't know she was part of the crew setting up for tonight's concert. Didn't know that Elvis Presley himself was scheduled to perform in just a few hours. Subscribe now, because what happens next will change everything you thought you knew about Elvis. By 6 in the evening, the Coliseum was filling up. 15,000 fans. The energy was electric. Elvis concerts weren't just shows, they were events. Moments that people remembered for the rest of their lives. Backstage, Elvis was in his dressing room, going through his pre-show ritual. Vocal warm-ups. Last-minute adjustments to his costume. A quiet moment alone before stepping into the spotlight. That's when Sarah Martinez, the woman from Beale Street, knocked on his door. She told him about Robert. About the homeless man with the broken voice singing, "Love Me Tender," like it was the last song on earth. About how his performance, raw and imperfect, had moved her more than anything she'd heard in years. Elvis listened in silence. When she finished, he asked a single question. "Where is he now?" "Probably still on Beale Street," Sarah said. Elvis looked at his watch. The show was supposed to start in 45 minutes. He turned to his manager. "Send someone. Bring him here." The manager started to protest. Security concerns. Logistics. The tight schedule. But Elvis cut him off with a look. "Bring him here. Now." 20 minutes later, Robert Hayes was in a car. Confused. Terrified. Convinced this was some kind of mistake. The security guard who picked him up didn't explain. Just told him to come. That someone wanted to meet him. When they arrived at the Coliseum, Robert thought they'd made an error. This was Elvis Presley's concert. He didn't belong here. He tried to leave, but the guard gently guided him inside. Through the back corridors. Past crew members rushing with equipment. Past the dressing rooms. Until they stopped in front of a door with a gold star on it. The door opened. And there stood Elvis Presley. For a moment neither man spoke. Robert's hands were shaking. His guitar hung from his shoulder like a weight. Elvis extended his hand. "I heard you sing today," he said. "Sarah told me about you. About how you sing my songs." Robert could barely breathe. I'm sorry, sir. I didn't mean any disrespect. Elvis shook his head. No disrespect. You gave that song something real. Something I try to give it every time, but sometimes forget. He paused. What's your name? Robert. Robert Hayes. Well, Robert, I'd like you to do something for me tonight. And then Elvis said something that nobody in that room expected. Something that would become legend. The arena was packed. The lights dimmed. The crowd erupted as Elvis took the stage. The opening notes of C.C. Rider filled the space. The show had begun. Elvis performed with his usual intensity, moving across the stage, connecting with the audience. Every song was a conversation, every gesture deliberate. But 40 minutes into the show, something shifted. Elvis was in the middle of "You've Lost That Loving Feeling" when he stopped. Mid-verse. The band continued for a few measures before realizing what was happening. Then they stopped too. The arena fell into confused silence. 15,000 people wondering if something had gone wrong. Technical issue. Health problem. Nobody knew. Elvis walked to the front of the stage. His voice, when he spoke, was quiet, intimate. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight something special is going to happen. Something I've never done before. He turned toward the wings. Robert, come out here. The crowd murmured. Who was Robert? What was happening? From the side of the stage, hesitant and overwhelmed, Robert Hayes emerged. Still in his worn clothes. Still clutching his guitar. The spotlight found him, and the entire arena saw him. A homeless man on Elvis Presley's stage. Some people gasped. Others whispered. Nobody understood. Elvis walked over to Robert. Put a hand on his shoulder. Spoke directly to him, but the microphone caught every word. Robert, earlier today you sang Love Me Tender on Beale Street. You sang it like it mattered. Like every word was true. I want you to sing it here. Tonight. With me. Robert's eyes widened. I can't. I'm nobody. You're somebody who knows what that song means, Elvis said. That makes you exactly who should sing it. The arena was dead silent. Waiting. Watching. Nobody moved. Robert looked out at 15,000 faces. His hands trembled on his guitar. His voice, when he finally spoke, was barely audible. I don't know if I can. Elvis smiled. A genuine, warm smile that put Robert at ease. Just sing it like you did this afternoon. That's all I'm asking. What happened next wasn't just a performance. It was something deeper. Something that would echo through the years. Robert's fingers found the first chord. It was shaky. Imperfect. But he played it. And then he began to sing. Love me tender, love me sweet. His voice cracked. His pitch wavered. But there was something in the way he sang. Something vulnerable. Something that came from a lifetime of loss and longing. Elvis joined him on the second verse. His voice, powerful and controlled, blended with Robert's broken one. Two voices. Two lives. Coming together in one song. The arena transformed. What started as confusion became understanding. What began as silence became something electric. People in the audience started to cry. Not because the performance was technically perfect. It wasn't. But because it was real. Robert sang like he was singing to someone he'd lost. Someone he'd never see again. Every word carried weight. Every note held pain. And Elvis, the biggest star in the world, stood beside him. Not overshadowing him. Not performing for the crowd. Just being present. Just honoring this man's story. When the song ended, there was a moment of absolute silence. And then the arena erupted. Not just applause. Something more. A standing ovation that lasted 5 full minutes. Robert was crying openly now. Elvis wrapped an arm around his shoulders. Held him there on stage. Let the moment breathe. Then Elvis did something else nobody expected. He took off his signature scarf. The one he'd worn during the entire show. He placed it around Robert's neck. "You keep this," he said, "as a reminder that you matter. That your voice matters." Robert couldn't speak. Could only nod. Tears streaming down his face. Elvis turned to the audience. "This is what music is supposed to be," he said. "Connection. Humanity. Honoring the truth in someone's voice, no matter where they come from." The crowd roared again. But Elvis wasn't done. He turned to his manager in the wings. Made a gesture. Within moments, his manager was on stage, whispering something to Robert. Elvis addressed the crowd one more time. "Robert Hayes has been living on the streets of Memphis. Tonight that changes. My team is going to make sure he has a place to stay. Make sure he has what he needs. Because tonight he reminded me why I do this." Share this story if you believe music has the power to change lives. Subscribe if you want more stories like this. The ending will break your heart in the best way. The show continued. But everything felt different. Elvis performed with a renewed intensity. The songs carried more weight. The connection with the audience deepened. But the moment everyone would remember was Robert. Standing on that stage. Holding Elvis's scarf. Looking out at 15,000 people who had seen him. Really seen him. After the show, backstage, Elvis sat with Robert for an hour. They talked about music. About life. About the choices that lead us to where we are. The dressing room was quiet. Just two men. Two guitars leaning against the wall. Elvis asked Robert about his daughter. About the last time they spoke. Robert's voice broke as he explained how pride and circumstances had created a distance he didn't know how to bridge. Elvis listened. Really listened. Not as a superstar. As someone who understood that fame and fortune couldn't fix everything. He'd had his own struggles with family. His own regrets about time lost. "You should call her," Elvis said. "Tonight. Right now." Robert shook his head. "It's been 12 years. She probably doesn't even remember my voice." Elvis picked up the phone on his dressing room table. Handed it to Robert. "Then remind her." What happened next stayed between them. But those who were outside the dressing room heard Robert's voice. Shaking at first. Then stronger. Then breaking with emotion. The call lasted 20 minutes. When Robert emerged, his eyes were red, but something had changed in his face. Something had lifted. Elvis arranged for Robert to have a room in a decent hotel. Gave him money to get back on his feet. But more than that, he gave him something else. Dignity. Recognition. A moment where he wasn't invisible. The next morning, Robert's daughter drove to Memphis from Nashville. They met for breakfast. It wasn't perfect. 12 years of distance couldn't be erased in one meal. But it was a start. A bridge being rebuilt, one word at a time. Robert Hayes never became famous. Never recorded an album. Never performed on another big stage. But he kept that scarf. And he kept playing his guitar. He found a small apartment in Memphis. Started playing at local churches and community centers. His daughter visited every month. Then every week. Slowly, the distance closed. In 1977, when news broke that Elvis had passed away, Robert was playing at a veterans hall. Someone came in and told him. He stopped mid-song. Set down his guitar. Walked outside and cried. Later that day, reporters found him. Asked him about that night in 1974. About what Elvis had meant to him. "He saw me," Robert said, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "In a world where everyone looked past me, Elvis stopped and saw me. He didn't have to do that. He had 15,000 people waiting. But he stopped everything. For me. A nobody." He paused, touching the scarf around his neck. He wore it every day now. "Elvis gave me more than money or a place to stay. He gave me back my voice. My dignity. He reminded me that I mattered. And when I called my daughter that night, I finally believed I deserved to be her father again." 3 years later, When Elvis passed away, Robert was interviewed by a local Memphis paper. They asked him about that night. About what it meant. "Elvis didn't just bring me on stage," Robert said. "He reminded me that I was human. That my voice mattered. That I wasn't just someone to walk past. For one night, I wasn't homeless. I was a musician. And that changed everything." The scarf is now in a small music museum in Memphis. A gift from Robert before he passed away in 1989. Next to it is a handwritten note. "This belonged to the king. But he gave it to a nobody. And for one night, that nobody felt like somebody." Elvis Presley performed thousands of concerts. Sang to millions of people. Broke records and made history. But the people who were there that night in 1974 will tell you it was the most important performance he ever gave. Because it wasn't about the music. It was about the man. It was about seeing someone who was invisible and making them matter. That's the real legacy of Elvis Presley. Not just the songs. Not just the fame. But the moments when he used his platform to honor someone else's humanity. The story of Robert Hayes and Elvis Presley reminds us that greatness isn't just about talent. It's about compassion. It's about recognizing the worth in others, even when the world has forgotten them. If this story moved you, share it. Let others know what Elvis really stood for. Subscribe for more untold stories of humanity and music. Leave a comment telling us what this story means to you. Sometimes the greatest performances aren't perfect. They're real. And that night in Memphis, Elvis proved that humanity matters more than perfection. Robert's scarf still hangs in that museum. A reminder that one moment of compassion can echo forever.